Most tech firms don't have a lead problem. They have what's called a sales architecture problem. And the moment the founder steps out of sales, everything collapses. But here's the truth that almost nobody is actually talking about. Every scalable tech firm productizes the problem they solve in some type of way. And the only difference between tech firms is whether the solution is actually productized. So let me show you in today's videos what I've seen in successful B2B tech companies that actually scale beyond the founder. So let's dive into things. I'm going to go over a couple of different things that are important for each tech founder to think about when they're trying to build a repeatable sales process that can scale without them. And I'm going to first start with arguably the most important part of this, which is a scalable entry point offer. And this is probably the most important thing that you're going to need in order to scale your business without your involvement in the sales side. It's going to be broken down into really two models that you have to think about. Right. So there's two models here. Model number one, which is a productized solution, which is repeatable delivery, right? It's clear method. It's the same scope. And this is going to be the easiest for sales reps to sell because it's super easy to kind of summarize your value proposition. In model number two, you're still going after a productized problem, but you're going to customize your delivery, meaning that, say that you're an AI consultancy or a tech consultancy, you have different people that come to you with different problems and you can create different solutions for them. However, you're solving the general same problem across the board with these people. So the only thing that really changes between model one and model two is that the way that you guys deliver your solutions. So let's quickly talk through each model so you can figure out which bucket you fall into, and then we'll talk about the next sections afterwards. But really, model number one is a productized solution. That means that your delivery is repeatable. You have a same problem, same method, same scope, the same outcome, typically the same price range, and it's easy to hand off to reps. Some quick examples are, hey, we implement HubSpot in 21 days. If you are productized SaaS, for example, unless you do like implementation work, which is custom, but most of the time, this is going to be productized solution, right? These are best for automation agencies, integration, standardized AI workflows, right? Or, packaged IT services. Model number two, right, is a custom solution, but it's a productized problem. Now, both of these models, they need to be a productized problem. It just doesn't really matter what the solution looks like for both of them, but you need to productize the problem, right? ICP is tight, meaning that your use cases are clear. You have clear workflow problems that are defined, and the outcomes are obvious. So for example, let's say we help logistic companies automate operational bottlenecks with AI, right? Or here are the top 3 workflows that you can use within your AI, within your logistics business to automate your manual invoicing. I'm just coming up with something off the top of my head. We eliminate manual workflows for healthcare teams, right? So stuff like this that is basically still going after a problem, because this is the most important part that I want you to take away from this, is that if you are a custom solution, right? Let's say that you're a custom dev shop, you're a custom software solutions, you're a custom app developer. Whatever it is that you do, you can still be custom. However, you need to make sure that what you're talking about on the front end, and especially in your messaging, is going after a specific problem, a specific industry, right? So that you can at least have something that is repeatable in terms of messaging that can resonate with your target market. So the really core distinction between the two, like I said, is the solution, right? You both want to have productized problems that you're going after, because that is the only way that you're going to build resonance in this market, right? Because if you think about your competition and how many times your ideal client profile is being marketed to every single day, the only way that you can actually stand out is by calling out a specific problem or calling out a specific industry, is being specific within your messaging. So if you don't already know what you fall into, this is a quick checklist to figure out which models you fall into so that you can build around each model. If you're in model number one, your service delivery is 80 to 90% same for every single client. Your outcome is standardized. Your process is already defined. Your pricing is consistent, right? And checklist number two, right, is if your delivery varies significantly from client to client, you solve a category problem, not one fixed problem. And so this is honestly the biggest challenge for a lot of people that fall within model number two, is that you could do so much, so you don't know exactly what it is that you should actually go out to market with. The whole thing that you should be thinking about in model number two, if you fall within this bucket, is how can you call out specific pain points and use cases of different solutions that you've built in the past or different customers that you've actively served. So for example, if you're in the healthcare industry, right, and say you only work with health tech startups, you could basically say, hey, we help you build a custom MVP if you're a health tech company. So what this does is it instantly builds credibility and resonance with those folks. And of course, the MVPs that you build are going to be completely different across the board for each health tech company that you work with. Okay, so now that you understand, which model you fall under, what is the next thing that you have to build out within the company? And that is your predictable qualification system, right? Now, so you may be thinking, oh, wow, like I just need more leads, right, to come through my funnel. How do I get more leads? But typically if you're at, let's just say $1 million plus in revenue, or you're at, $3 to $40 million in revenue, you don't necessarily have a lead problem all the time. Now, in some cases you may. However, what you want to focus on, especially if your deals are exceeding 20K in value, it's not like you need a whole bunch of deals to scale your business. You just need the right types of deals to come through. And a lot of, B2B tech companies and AI firms that we talk to typically work within the 50 to 100K range or 20 to 30K range. Their customer LTV are big, so they don't necessarily need a lot of leads to scale. What they do need is qualification so that they're talking to the right people, right? And they're not wasting their time with a whole bunch of tire kickers. So how do you do this strategically from an ads perspective or from just a marketing perspective? Is you want to have messaging that filters. So for example, if you're running an ad, instead of saying in that ad, like, hey, businesses, we help you automate your solutions, right? It's something super, I'm just making up a crazy example. Instead, what you want to call out is you could say, supply chain and logistic managers, are you looking to automate your manual invoicing process, right? So something that is specific, right, to a specific audience that is going to bring you in those types of people. Now you can do two types of messaging qualifications. You can either do it by roles, right? Calling out the specific role in your ad, or by problems. They both work. So just, split test to see exactly which one works better for you specifically. Second thing that we're going to do is we are also going to have a form on all of the types of ads that we run, the outbound that we do, basically to screen whether or not they're the right person to be talking to. So we want to have strategic questions that we can come up with that we can put within this form, so we're not just wasting our time with a whole bunch of tire kickers. So what those strategic questions look like, they can vary from client to client, but let's just say, for example, you wanted a certain revenue size, right? So say you only work with companies that do above $1 million in revenue. You could say, this is a revenue question. How much do you generate in your business right now? Or hey, like you wanted to only talk to specific decision makers around a specific use case that you want to offer. You would ask those questions within the type form so that you can basically get those people on those calls. Now, the third thing that we talk about here is SDR and setter pre-qualification. Now, this is really important if you already have an SDR that you can work with, or you could do this yourself if you're a founder without a sales team, is you can call every single lead that books on your calendar, or you can pre-call every single person that positive responds to you so that you can figure out if, first of all, they're the right person to be talking to and if it's worth your time, right? Because as a founder or, certain people that are busy within an organization that they have a lot going on, you don't want to spend your time wasted on a whole bunch of calls of people who would never buy in the first place. So what you want to do is call these leads beforehand, right? Ask those quick qualifying questions, make sure that, when you do speak with them, they are the right person to speak to. Now, there is a caveat that I will say here, right? There is a philosophy within sales that, you talk to everyone, you're going to close more deals. Now, this is true, right? If you talk to more people, you will have maybe a lower close rate, but you'll have more deals that eventually happen. But this only works with people that are very hungry, like hungry sales teams, or a hungry founder who's willing to talk to everyone. It's not the most efficient way. However, you can sometimes close more deals this way, but it's not the way that I recommend to scale, because typically you're having to breed a certain type of culture in order to do this. So only in some cases will I ever recommend you to talk to everyone. And that's usually at the beginning of your, let's say you're offering a certain product, certain service, trying to get some feedback from the market, but it's not really something that you could do scalable. Now, so once you've put that predictable, qualification system in place, right? You have those certain filters. Now is you want to build a repeatable sales motion. Now, I can't explain to you how important this is because this is arguably one of the spots where a lot of people go wrong in trying to build out a, repeatable sales process is they don't have a process, right? The founder is selling and they're selling off of their intuition. They're selling off of their expertise, which is great when you're by yourself. But if you want to replicate a process that can sell without you, you need to build a process. So the typical process and the structure that I recommend for most B2B tech firms to adopt is pretty simple. It's a 2-call process. Now, I understand that you may have more calls within your, let's just say, selling environment based upon the level of company that you're going after. If you're going after enterprise or, there's just multiple decision makers. However, you should try to implement a 2-call process across the board because there's a couple reasons. First of all, all, you're going to condense the sales cycles, right? So sales cycles typically drag out from what I've seen, and definitely, it depends on the industry that you're going after, but it drags out because you don't have a good sales process in place. You don't have a qualified steps on each individual stage, and you're not moving people from each stage to each stage. So what I typically recommend within, discovery, like your call number one with a prospect, is trying to get all the other decision makers on that second call with you. Because if you can get them on that second call with you, you can now eliminate the friction of, first of all, getting an objection from, someone else that you don't even know that's going to kill your deal. And secondly, it's going to decrease your sales cycles so that you can close deals quicker, right? Because most of these follow-up calls, if you think about it, they typically are from just having to invite other decision makers to the call. Now understand, you may not be able to get everyone on as a decision maker on that second call. So if you can't do that, then obviously book a third call. You have to maybe sell the primary person first before you can get inside of the other decision makers. However, we should have this process, 2 steps, right? A 2-step process. And what's important is also making sure that you're using sales assets between the calls. I see this all the time from founders who have these great case studies, great testimonials. They got a whole bunch of social proof, but they're not using it with their prospects, right? So you should be using your assets to your advantage when you're having sales calls. Hey, John, before our call, I actually wanted to send this through to you because you reminded me of another client that we're working with right now that we've been able to get X, Y, and Z results with. Would you want to see that? Yeah, of course I would. Okay, send that over between the discovery to the proposal, right? So you could start to build trust with them. They see that you've done and you've completed their problem and solved their problem for other people. So they instantly trust you more and you can increase your close rate. So mapping out these types of sales assets that you want to send in between calls, that's also going to help you build out a repeatable sales motion. Now, the last part that I want to talk about here is the mistake I see so many founders make is hiring too soon, right? So I just talked about all these different things that you need to do, right, as a founder. And the biggest mistake that I see is people will hire sales rep prematurely. And what this does is it puts a lot of pressure on a salesperson to have to figure out the process themselves. And then you set unrealistic expectations with that salesperson because you're like, you can't sell like me. Of course they can't sell like you. They don't have the expertise, they don't have the know-how, and they haven't been as involved with the product or what you're selling for as long as you have. So you can't expect the salespeople to close as well as you can. If you do, what you're looking for is a unicorn, and unicorns are very hard to find. Instead, what you should build for and what you should optimize for is predictability. So this doesn't mean that you have to create a, rambunctious type of sales process that has to have all these different, little nuances before you hire a salesperson, but you want to have a V1 sales process, right? So at least mapping out each stage, the types of questions that you should be asking on each call, right? The 2-call flow, the sales assets that you're sending between, so that you can give whoever comes on board that process for them to be able to follow. And it's super easy for them to, first of all, ramp up, and it's super easy for them to understand what they should be doing at each stage of the process. So those are the main categories that I will say that you will need to build out, for your founder-led sales function to no longer be a thing. Is you need to obviously have a clear entry point offer, right? Going after a productized problem, whether that is a productized solution that you offer or a custom solution, you want to build your messaging and your offer around a specific problem that you can solve, or 1 or 2 problems that you can solve. Second thing is a qualification system that is able to, eliminate the tire kickers and also save your time or your reps' times that you hire on people that are unqualified. And the third thing is a repeatable sales motion. So having every single part of your sales process documented, knowing exactly what to do at each stage. And then at that point, you can hire that closer who will be able to, replicate exactly what you're doing. And even if drop off falls off, they still have a process that they can follow. So if this was able to bring you value in any type of way and you got some from this video, go ahead and like, comment, and subscribe for more content specifically geared towards tech firms and how you guys can scale and break some plateaus that you may be in. So the last thing that I'll leave you with, if your firm's stuck in founder-led sales and you want help building this architecture inside of your business, go ahead and send me a message on LinkedIn and I can point you in the right direction. All right. But other than that, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day and take it easy. Ciao.